How the wisest man who ever lived ended his days. Far from God, imagine receiving supernatural wisdom, immeasurable riches, absolute power from God, and yet still failing miserably. This is the story of King Solomon, a man who had everything, literally everything, but lost what mattered most. Have you ever wondered why extremely intelligent and successful people sometimes make terribly destructive decisions? What makes someone at the height of success simply crumble? Solomon had it all. He was the wealthiest man of the ancient world, ruled the largest territorial expanse Israel had ever seen, built the majestic Temple of Jerusalem, and his wisdom was so extraordinary that kings and queens traveled thousands of miles just to hear him speak. But there is a side to this story that few know. A dark side that reveals how even the wisest of men can fall into devastating traps. Today, I will show you the 3 fatal traps that led Solomon to ruin. More importantly, I will reveal how to identify and avoid these same traps that, to this day, continue to destroy highly capable individuals. Pay close attention because, contrary to what many believe, wisdom and knowledge are not always enough to protect us from destruction. In fact, sometimes they can make us even more vulnerable. Are you ready to discover how to avoid the same fate as the wisest man in history? Solomon's reign began with an extraordinary divine promise. When God appeared to him in a dream, offering him anything he desired, Solomon did not choose riches. Instead, he asked for wisdom to govern. This choice pleased God so much that he not only granted Solomon wisdom, but also bestowed unprecedented wealth and glory upon him. But here begins our first lesson. Sometimes our greatest blessings can become our worst traps. The Bible tells us that Solomon's wealth was simply incomparable. His throne was made of ivory, overlaid with pure gold. All his utensils were of gold. Silver was as common in Jerusalem as stones. Each year he received 666 talents of gold. That would be equivalent to over $1 billion today. Annually, his merchant ships returned every 3 years loaded with gold, silver, ivory, monkeys, and peacocks. He had 4,000 stalls for his horses and chariots, and 12,000 cavalrymen. The biblical text states that he excelled all the kings of the earth in riches and wisdom. But observe the subtle process of deterioration. First came ostentation. Solomon began building increasingly grandiose palaces. His own palace took 13 years to build, almost twice as long as it took to construct God's temple. He established a luxurious court, where daily consumption included 30 measures of refined flour, 60 measures of common flour, 10 fat oxen, 20 pasture oxen, 100 sheep, as well as deer, gazelles, roe deer, and tamed birds. Next came the reliance on questionable trade alliances. To maintain his extravagant lifestyle, Solomon began making agreements with pagan nations, importing horses from Egypt, something God expressly forbade the kings of Israel from doing. Finally came the excessive taxation of the people. To sustain such luxury, Solomon imposed forced labor and heavy tributes on Israel. This economic oppression was so severe that after his death, the people pleaded with his son Rehoboam for relief, a request that, when denied, led to the division of the kingdom. But the true trap of wealth wasn't in the money itself. It was in what it did to Solomon's heart. Gradually, his material abundance created an illusion of self-sufficiency. He began to trust more in his political and commercial alliances than in God. His prosperity made him forget where all his blessings came from. In Deuteronomy 17, God had specifically warned the future kings of Israel about 3 dangers. Not to multiply horses, military power, not to multiply wives, alliances through marriage, and not to multiply silver and gold for themselves. Solomon, even with all his wisdom, fell into all 3 traps. It is impressive how the very man who wrote, "Better a little with the fear of the Lord than great wealth with turmoil," ended up falling victim to the seduction of riches. His own words in Ecclesiastes sound like a painful confession. Everything I saw was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was better than what I have seen. I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and indeed, it is meaningless. When I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. The absolute power that Solomon attained was unprecedented in Israel's history. The son of the great King David, he inherited a consolidated kingdom and expanded its borders from the Euphrates River to the border of Egypt. But as the old saying goes, power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Let's examine how this corruption gradually developed in the heart of Israel's most powerful king. At the beginning of his reign, Solomon demonstrated touching humility. When he ascended the throne, he declared himself a little child who did not know how to go out or come in, a sincere confession of his inexperience and dependence on God. This initial humility was precisely what led him to ask for wisdom instead of power or wealth. The famous judgment of the two mothers vying for a living baby demonstrated how he initially used his power to serve the people with justice and discernment. His wisdom in governance was so extraordinary that all Israel heard of the judgment the king had given and saw that the Lord was with the king and that his decisions were just. God gave Solomon wisdom and very great insight, and a wide range of knowledge as measureless as the sand on the seashore. But power began to go to his head. The first sign was the excessive centralization of power. Solomon organized his kingdom into 12 administrative districts, each required to support the royal household for 1 month of the year. However, intriguingly, the tribe of Judah, his own tribe, was exempt from this obligation. Signs of favoritism and abuse of authority began to surface. The power structure he built was impressive but oppressive. The biblical text mentions that he had 70,000 men who carried loads and 80,000 who were engaged in the work of the mountains. Many of these were forced laborers, Israelites reduced to a condition similar to the slavery their ancestors had suffered in Egypt. Power also manifested in his personal life in devastating ways. Solomon accumulated 700 wives and 300 concubines, numbers far beyond any need for political alliances. This excessive harem was not only a display of power, but a clear violation of God's laws for the kings of Israel. The arrogance of power became evident in his response to divine warnings. God appeared to Solomon twice, an extraordinary honor. In the second appearance, God specifically warned him about the consequences of turning away. But Solomon, intoxicated by power, ignored God's warnings. He began to act as if he were above the law, even God's law. The peak of this corruption, by power manifested in the construction of altars for pagan gods. Imagine this. The same man who built the magnificent temple for the God of Israel now erected altars for Moloch, Chemosh, and other pagan deities. The biblical text is clear. He did this to please his foreign wives. Power had made him so self-confident that he believed he could make concessions with sin without facing consequences. The irony is poignant. The man who had power over an immense kingdom lost power over himself. As he himself would later write, "A man without self-control is like a city with broken-down walls." The result was devastating. The kingdom that his father David had so diligently unified was divided shortly after his death. His son Rehoboam would inherit only 2 tribes, while the other 10 rebelled to form the northern kingdom. The power Solomon had so carefully cultivated slipped through his fingers, leaving a legacy of division and bitterness. This is perhaps the most painful lesson about power. When used to serve oneself instead of serving God and others, it becomes an instrument of destruction. As Jesus would teach centuries later, "Whoever wants to be great among you must be your servant." Perhaps Solomon's most dramatic fall was through his unbridled passions. The same man who wrote the beautiful poems of the Song of Solomon, celebrating pure love between a man and a woman, ended up a slave to his own carnal desires. The Bible is direct in stating, King Solomon loved many foreign women. He had 700 wives, all of whom were princesses, and 300 concubines. His wives turned his heart after other gods. This was not a sudden fall, but a gradual process of increasingly compromising his carnal desires. Let's examine how this trap developed. Initially, Solomon's marriages seemed to have legitimate political purposes. The first significant alliance was with the Pharaoh of Egypt, sealed by marrying his daughter. Politically, this union made sense. It guaranteed peace with the greatest power of the time, but there was a fundamental problem. God had expressly forbidden marriages with foreign women, foreseeing exactly what would happen. For they will turn your heart after other gods. Once the first exception was made, the pattern was set. Each new political alliance brought more foreign wives, each bringing their own gods and cultural practices. Solomon's harem became a true multicultural religious center, completely contrary to the exclusivity God demanded. The biblical text reveals something deeply disturbing. When Solomon was old, his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God, as the heart of David his father had been. Note well, this happened in his old age, not in the impetuosity of youth. After decades of wisdom and communion with God, he succumbed to the constant influence of his passions. The result was catastrophic. On the mountain facing Jerusalem, visible from the temple he had built for the Lord, Solomon erected altars to Chemosh, the detestable god of the Moabites, and to Moloch, to whom children were sacrificed. The irony is devastating. The man who built God's house ended up building temples for idols, but the true tragedy was not only in his outward actions, but in his internal transformation. The text says, "His heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God, as the heart of David his father had been." His passions not only changed his actions, they changed his essence. In his later writings, especially in Ecclesiastes, we can feel the weight of repentance. "I have seen all the things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaningless, a chasing after the wind. I have seen everything I can see, and behold, all is vanity and a striving after wind." These words sound like the painful confession of someone who learned the hard way. The lesson is clear and relevant. Our passions, when not submitted to God's lordship, have the power to slowly destroy us. No matter how much knowledge or spiritual experience we have, no one is immune. As Paul would warn centuries later, "Therefore let anyone who thinks that they stand take heed lest they fall." Solomon's case shows us that unbridled passions rarely come alone. They open doors to other forms of infidelity. It started with seemingly small compromises, progressed to tolerance of pagan practices, and ended in declared idolatry. As James writes, "Each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire and enticed." More painful still is realizing that Solomon did not fall for lack of knowledge. He himself had written numerous warnings in Proverbs about the dangers of seduction and infidelity. His fall came from allowing his passions to speak louder than his wisdom. Solomon's story is not just an ancient account. It is a mirror reflecting the dilemmas and temptations we face today. Let's extract practical and urgently needed lessons for our current reality. First lesson, the danger of success. Without vigilance, we live in an era obsessed with success, where coaches and gurus sell magical formulas for prosperity. But Solomon's story warns us, success can be more dangerous than failure. When everything is going well, we tend to let down our spiritual guard. How many Christian leaders, executives, and entrepreneurs have fallen precisely at the peak of their careers? Success without spiritual vigilance is like driving at high speed with blinders on. The impact will be proportional to the height of the fall. Second lesson, the illusion of intellectual immunity in an age that idolizes knowledge and information. We need to understand that intellectual wisdom is not a guarantee of moral protection. Solomon was smarter than any of us, and yet he fell. How many Christians today think, "This will never happen to me. I know the word well"? We live in an era of master's degrees, doctorates, and specializations, but knowledge without submission to God can become just a more sophisticated path to pride. As it is written, knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. Third lesson, the danger of gradual compromises in the digital age. We are constantly bombarded with small temptations. A click here, a concession there. Solomon did not fall overnight. It was a gradual process of small compromises. He started with a foreign wife and ended with 1,000. He began with a small religious tolerance and ended up worshiping idols. Today, how many of us are not making small concessions with worldly entertainment, inappropriate relationships, or dubious practices? As the saying goes, the devil doesn't need to make us sin much, just enough to keep us away from God. Fourth lesson, the need for accountability. One of Solomon's greatest weaknesses was that, as king, no one could question him. In our individualistic culture, many Christians live the same way, without accountability to anyone, without a community to lovingly confront them. Social media gives us the illusion of connection, but often isolates us from true, deep relationships. We need more than ever authentic spiritual friendships, mentors who can confront us, a community that supports and corrects us. Fifth lesson, the danger of prosperity without purpose. We live in a consumerist society that constantly pushes us to accumulate more. Solomon had everything but lost his purpose. His riches became an end in themselves, not a means to glorify God. How many Christians today are falling into the same trap? They work, prosper, and achieve. But for what? As Solomon discovered too, late, everything is vanity when disconnected from the divine purpose. Sixth lesson, the importance of legacy. Solomon's failure affected generations. His kingdom was divided, his son lost 10 tribes, and Israel was never the same. Today, our choices also impact others, our children, our church, our community. In an age of instant gratification, we need to think more about the legacy we are building. Our decisions today shape the tomorrow of many. The final message is clear. In our era of abundant information, entertainment, and possibilities, we need more than ever to return to basic principles: humility, dependence on God, spiritual vigilance, and commitment to truth. As Jesus said, "What good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul?" Solomon's story is not just a distant biblical account. It is a mirror of our own journey. We all face our own traps, whether it's the seduction of success, the allure of power, or the temptations of worldly desires. Pause now and reflect. Which of these traps are you at risk of falling into? Perhaps you are prospering like never before, but feeling your spirituality wane. Or maybe you are attaining positions of influence but noticing your character being tested. Or like many, you are making small concessions that, day by day, are distancing you from your original purpose. The good news is that, unlike Solomon, you still have time to change your story. Every choice you make today shapes who you will be tomorrow. As Solomon himself, Proverbs, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." If this message touched your heart, don't let it end here. Click the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to receive more content that will help you live a life with purpose and wisdom. And be sure to watch our video on the 7 decisions that transformed David's life. You will be surprised by the powerful lessons we can learn. True wisdom is not in never falling, but in learning to rise every time we fall.